You're listening to the Running Up the Score podcast.
The Stanley Cup. We're down to now Game 6. It's 3-2 Blues right now. But there was some controversy in Game 5 when it comes down to two plays, really. Tyler Bozak, slew-footed, Akari, or however you want to say his last name. And on that play, the Blues ended up scoring the game-winning goal, technically. And, you know, Bruins fans are all over it. You know, you could see Neely, you know, in the box throw, you know, a water bottle or whatever it was. It just, the refs have been bad. And then again, you know, I think it was earlier in the game or later in the game, Ivan Barbeshev hit Marcus Johansson high. He ends up getting suspended for it, but wasn't called on the ice. So it's another thing. It's like, you know, there's been controversy through the NHL playoffs starring the refs. So it's Game 5 went the St. Louis Blues way. They're going back to St. Louis now. This is big for Boston. Boston has to win this game, obviously, because it's an elimination game. Same thing with, you know, the Warriors. Every game is an elimination game now. And, you know, just overall, I think the hockey playoffs, obviously, are always better than the NBA playoffs. That's my own opinion.
Well, the problem, what I've always talked about is how you can't predict it. And, you know, I couldn't have predicted Toronto to be in the championship. I'll give them the credit there where it's due. But I could have seen Milwaukee in the championship, and obviously it was those two that were 1 and 2 out of the East, and it's been said since the beginning of the season it was those two teams. So
no one
and then
really
obviously
thought,
Golden State coming out of the West. So
no one really thought
just predicted it
in the NHL like the NHL playoffs.
No, I would never have been able to call this championship.
I don't. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, you know, everybody knew Bruins were good, but they haven't showed like all season that they were like a Stanley Cup winning team. And I think that's kind of why everybody kind of stayed away from them. You know, they're getting older. You know, Marchand's old. Chara's ancient. You know, it's just, overall, they're an older team. Nobody really thought. Once they got into the playoffs, they kicked it into a whole new gear. St. Louis. No one even really thought St. Louis would even get to this point, let alone the second round of the playoffs. So that also is a surprise. When you look at the NHL playoffs, it was surprises all over. And we talked about this last week. You know, the Capitals getting smoked. The Pittsburgh Penguins getting absolutely mollywopped by the Isles. You know, you had teams like that go down, and it's like, wow, like, what's going to happen now? I mean, you had the Capitals who, you know, won the Stanley Cup last year, and they just get smoked in the first round. So, as you know, Kevin's always said, it's totally unpredictable when it comes to this.
And now, so great.
And now, like going into the series, you're saying, all right, Bruins got this. Blues will make it tough, but the Bruins got this. And now look at it, 3-2 Blues now, going back to St. Louis. We might be playing Gloria next week.
You know, there's no doubt the Blues are playing really well. And
they are.
You know, and like you said, I had seen some of those videos of some of those plays that led to Blues goals. And, you know, obviously, was a penalty necessary in that situation? I'm pretty sure there was. But, again, it's a long playoffs, folks. And, you know, for example, Brad Marchand. The guy probably should have been suspended 3 times since the playoffs started, and yet here he still stands playing every single game so far. So, you know, Bruins fans can be very upset about certain aspects of that game, and they have every right. But you've gotten the benefit of the doubt previously. So, you know, there are times where you need to just sit back and take it for what it is, and obviously, you know, to critique a referee in hockey. I mean, go try it yourself. You know, go tell the average fan, you know, it's particularly in Boston, if you want, go right ahead. Go right into the ice and go be a National Hockey League referee. Because you'll look stupid.
Yeah.
Because, with all due respect, when it comes to playoff hockey, there shouldn't really be penalties being called at that point. You're usually allowed to let them play. I was quite surprised as an Islander fan to see the amount of calls that were made in our first round series as well as our second round.
Yeah.
A lot of penalties being called than ever before. Now, is that because players just thought they can be free and do, extra physical harm, yeah, basically, in the process of playing the game of hockey? But you got to remember, when you're throwing your weight around like that, it's all part of the game. You're trying to get into the other team's head. You're trying to bully them. That's what hockey's always been about. And that's why the greatest thing about NHL playoffs is that you're able to bring out, the physicality in the game. And, the referees are really just letting them play. Now, granted, I watched the play. I did see it. And that was a clear-cut penalty. And it did lead to a goal, because that's when it becomes controversial.
Yeah.
But you can't sit there and put the blame on that one play for the 60-minute game that your team just played. You just played a 60-minute game, and you put one goal in the net. One. Now, I know, I'm an Islander fan. We were putting one goal in the net against the Carolina Hurricanes all series. Look how that worked out for us.
Yeah.
We got nowhere. Would they win a game? 5-0 earlier in this series, too, the Boston Bruins? So they know how to score.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that one penalty there didn't lead to, 1 or 2 goals in those games. Now, you really just need to know that it's a balancing act. You can't critique NHL referees. It's probably one of the most difficult jobs in the world. They're probably the ones that should be making money like baseball players make right now, because of just the controversy that, of course, follows. Like, we've talked about this in every sport, the NFL, everything. Nobody's perfect. We're all human. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to miss things. Granted, if 20,000 other people, like you had talked about, are able to catch that mistake and you weren't able to catch it, it's a bang-bang play. It's just like any other job. You've seen things getting critiqued everywhere about how people are able to react on a snap reaction, and then they are able to type about it on their computers or on their phones to critique how, what is wrong here. But it's like, you need to be put in those shoes to fully understand the situation. And that goes for just almost any job title, not just for a referee where a lot of the spotlight's coming on, but there's a lot of pressure on you.
My thing on the slew foot, the Bozak Slew foot, and yes, that's a real phrase. You can go on Urban Dictionary and find that. But on that kind of play, though, a guy comes up behind the guy that does have the puck, and all of a sudden his legs go out from underneath him. That should show you right away that there's something fishy about that. That's not something that you could,
But between you and me, both legs? That's what I'm saying. So, it's a
mean,
very difficult call.
No, it is. It is. But that's a call that an NHL ref would call about 95% of the time. That's the problem. But that's not here nor there. When it comes down to it, the Blues are up 3-2. And as you said, they should have, scored more goals. That's what it comes down to. You have to score more goals than the other team. They didn't. They lose 2-1. They're down 3-2 now.
Everybody gets calls not going their way. The same thing happened to the Islanders, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the New York Islanders lost their series on the basis that because the referees didn't do the thing right. Are you kidding me? Now, there are times where that is an issue. The NFL had a big issue with it earlier this year. I can understand that completely. But the New York, when it comes to hockey, there were missed calls, but it happens. It's a very quick game. These guys are flying. So when you miss something like that, it's not the end of the world. Continue to play. Now, I don't know who it was on Boston, but he was still on the floor. Bro, you didn't die. You're a hockey player. We all know how tough hockey players are. Get up and play. Now, because maybe you were out of position, that's what led to that goal being scored. So, at that point, you can blame the referees all you want. But when push comes to shove, you need to get back up and continue to play. If the referee saw it, they will call it. But you need to get back up and play no matter what. I'm never going to sit there and tell you and blame that one player for being the reason as to why that goal was given up. But, there's going to be missed calls everywhere. Now, I know it's the Stanley Cup Finals and there's a higher precedent. I understand. but throughout the entire playoffs it happens. And what's different about losing in the first round if you were the best team in the league than losing in the Stanley Cup Finals off a missed call? It's the same effect. No cup.
You've been listening to the Running Up the Score podcast. For more Running Up the Score, go follow the show on Twitter and Instagram at RUTS Sports.